Christian Zehr is with us in studio. So for people who don't know you, Christian, why don't you just give like a little background and then tell us what's going on in life lately?
Sure. So if you recall from my dad's interview, he is a U.S. diplomat. So I grew up all over the world, a few years in one country, a few years in another. So my childhood was very much international, very much intercultural, all that good stuff. I went to college in Texas, musical theater, and kind of had a little bit of a time of wandering the few years after that before I got here. And here I'm a worship leader, a graphic designer, and just recently got back from a pretty life-changing trip to visit my parents in Jerusalem. I was there for like 3 months. And that was really incredible. I'd love to talk about it. I feel like we can't really get into that completely without getting into the 10 years before that. This isn't going to take 10 years to tell. Because I think that like the impact of what that trip really meant, not only for me, but for my parents, for a lot of people involved in this story, the impact is really incomplete without understanding kind of all of the preliminary information. So how did we get here? Like I said, I was in Texas for college, and during my time there, I came out as gay, and also tried meth for the first time, which in hindsight was not a great idea.
Right, yeah. Not a lot of people have the insight to say it was good.
If only someone had ever warned me not to do drugs. Oh, man.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that created a lot of tension in the family. Quite a rift between me and my family from that situation.
From which one?
Both of them. Mm-hmm. I don't know at what point my parents knew that I had developed a drug addiction. That I'm not sure about. But I kind of came out to them my sophomore year. And
in college,
and
yeah. What year was that?
2013. Which was a great summer. 2013. Mm-hmm. That was music was good. Anyway,
I have to look back.
I met my wife that summer.
Oh,
wow, great summer.
I was in college.
We were this. How old are you? 30, 31?
30 next month.
30. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I would have been going into my senior year. That fall. Mm. Yep. Good year.
It was, yeah. All things considered. So that began quite a few years for me of just a really intense decline. Obviously, drugs do that. Mm-hmm. And for my parents, that started a pretty long journey of intercession, of having to cling to hope, and really learning how to trust God, how to extend grace and truth, all of that. So I finished college and realized, I forgot to make plans for my life. I just kind of was done with the only goal I had ever set for myself.
That happens a lot.
And so all my classmates all moved to New York and are all pursuing careers in theater, and I was just kind of stuck in this little college town in West Texas, with just me and my drugs to keep me company. So yeah, having no purpose, having no mission, that's a really bad place to be, for anyone. But so there, once I had, burned enough bridges, ruined enough friendships, kind of been enough of a selfish monster there, I ended up leaving that town and went to Houston for a bit. I was in Phoenix. Actually, I was in Old Forge area for like a few months there.
New York?
Yeah.
Just like randomly came up this way?
Sort of.
Because that's close.
Yeah, actually, all of these situations were like I would find someone online, convince them to get me a bus ticket, and let me stay with them. So actually, before I went to Old Forge, like the night there, I got to New York, and my parents took me to Matt and Tish's, and I was going to get picked up there to go to this new living situation and this new job that I would have in Old Forge. I barely remember that night. So wandering around a lot. I end up in Phoenix after a while, and I was there for like, I don't know, maybe 9 months. And that's where things were objectively the worst. I didn't have anywhere to stay. I didn't have any money. I occasionally would have an ID, but most of the time I would have lost it. And I was doing a lot of meth. And as I had mentioned before, living a very openly gay life. Not that those two have to go hand in hand, but they sometimes do. Sometimes, a lot of times do.
Why?
I don't know. I'm not, yeah. I only know what I experienced, and I know that, especially looking back, I wonder how much of that addiction was me actually being chemically addicted to a substance, and how much of it was me just being so angry and feeling lost and wanting to hurt myself. I don't really get why that, but I know that was true. Kind of wanting to destroy me as much as I could. So, and I don't want to tell this story just like shock factor, like, whoa, what a crazy life. I don't want to give the details of this story any more attention than is strictly necessary for the understanding of the severity of the situation.
Right.
So during that time, I don't have anywhere to stay unless I can find someone who finds me attractive enough to be in their space for as long as I'm entertaining enough. Other than that, just walking around in Phoenix until I can find someone else. So multiple sexual partners a day, strangers that I will never see again. And that felt like it should have been very validating, but it's not real. Lust has nothing to do with someone lusting after you, has nothing to do with you. That's just them. And if we are looking for validation from other people, they don't have enough authority to validate me. Who are you to give me worth? Furthermore, if I'm looking in myself for validation, like, oh, I think I'm worthy, I don't have that authority either. If they don't have the authority, I don't, because we're both people. So all of this, just trying to feel good enough for someone or good enough to be desired, like it's not real.
It's pretty empty.
It's empty, and it will never be enough because there will always be someone else. There will always be another person, someone who's more, you will never be enough. It will never be enough validation. It will never be enough attention. It will never be enough worth ascribed to you because people can't ascribe you worth. They don't have the authority to do so.
Yeah.
So during this time, my parents are in Tel Aviv. During like the last 2 years of this, me not communicating with them not knowing, am I alive? Where am I? Have I been thrown in prison? They don't really know. So the last 2 years of that time, they're in Tel Aviv. And their community there was a really huge support for them. Their church in Herzliya, shout out King of Kings Community Herzliya, like their 9 a.m. prayer group, that's who my mom was going to war with for me. And it also feels like this story is only half mine. Me telling this story, like it's only partially mine to tell. I feel like for the real impact, you need to hear from my mom, from my sister, from my dad, because I just kind of showed up in the story. They were the ones behind the scenes, kind of working on all of this. So like they saw the miracles happen. I just kind of showed up. So during that time, they're in Tel Aviv. They will tell anyone who's willing to listen, like, our son's in a really bad place. This is what's going on. I just, just not leaving themselves room to be embarrassed about the situation because it's dire. They need help. They need support. And I think that is a huge display of humility. It also, that's what gives the miracles power. That's what gives the testimony of the transformation power, is the fact that people knew the problem. People knew what was wrong. And so then when the transformation comes, there are people who go, wow, I knew that story. You're telling me it turned out like that? So they're in Tel Aviv. They are interceding for me. And they end up finishing up their tour there. Their next one's going to be in Belize. And so they will be passing through the U.S., moving from one country to another. So they managed to get in touch with me in Phoenix somehow. There had been 2 situations prior where I had told them, like, hey, I might be in danger here. I might need to leave. And they're like, okay, you have a ticket. Get to the airport. And I just wouldn't. I just couldn't. Something in the back of my mind, something I knew, like, if you leave, that's it. It's over. And
This lifestyle that you have,
right? Like you're not coming back. That's it.
Yep. That must have pulled.
Well, it's so interesting how, like, that went from sounding like a threat to sounding like a promise over a short amount of time. So yeah, there were 2 situations where I had a plane ticket. I just had to get to the airport. Of course, I didn't get myself to the airport either time. And so then they got in touch with me and they're like, we're a crazy thing. Our connecting flight is in Phoenix. Isn't that wild? We're on our way to New York and we're going to be in Phoenix. And they're like, what if you just, like, grab your stuff and you come to New York just for a month and, like, detox, just have some real food, get to sleep for a bit, not have to be observed 24/7. That's a huge thing. Oh my word. Learning to not have to perform for people anymore. I'm still struggling with that a little bit. Anyway, so for some reason I agree. And I mean, not for some reason. It's the people all over the world who I can't actually imagine that day how many people there must have been praying for this very situation. And it's a little bit overwhelming to think about, and it makes me feel very small, and I don't like it. So they managed to find me. I meet up with them. We're in their hotel room for a night, and then we're going to fly out in the morning, kind of going around the city collecting my stuff as we go. That night, I leave to go have, one last hurrah, and I'm debating, like, do I even go back to the hotel room? Maybe I should just leave. I had gotten very good at just disappearing from situations at that point, like climbing out of windows.
Yeah, just disassociating with whatever the path is.
Physically leaving.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, being in the middle of like hanging out and just Christian's just gone.
Yep.
Okay, maybe we'll see him in a month or so. So yeah, it can't have been me that got me back to the hotel because I didn't want to. But I get there just in time for them to, pack up the Uber, head to the airport, and the entire time I just I'm on the verge of just booking it, just running. Had someone that I had texted like, hey, if I tell you, come pick me up here at the airport. And they're like, cool, I'll be there. And just, again, it had to have been that army of prayer that I stayed and got on the plane and the connecting flight, I don't know, wherever that was, that I didn't just run away at that point either. So we get to New York, and they take me to Matt and Tish's Restoration House in Constableville.
Shout out.
And leave me there. And they head off to their Belizean paradise. And so that was the beginning of hope for them, for me, for my future. Because Constableville has no people in it.
That's true.
So it's really easy to just not do drugs there.
Yeah.
What year was that?
2019, August.
Okay.
2019. And so recovery.
Wow. Yeah.
6 years. 6 years of wandering.
That would have been like when you and I met, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Yep.
Only 6 years ago.
Yeah, that's why I was the worst. That was a rough time. What was I saying?
I feel like I've known you a lot longer than that.
I must have heard about you before that.
Right. In IU, but like we had never met
Yeah.
until that day that you came to our house.
Yeah. That would make sense. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like I've actually known you much longer than that.
That
feels like a long
the
time
house on
ago.
Evergreen.
Yeah.
Wow.
That feels like a very long time ago,
That
too.
does. Oh my goodness.
I liked you right
Yeah.
away.
That's crazy.
You liked him already.
I did. I liked you right away. Yeah. No, I did. Like we had it. Like we got along really well, and yeah. I didn't know anything about you,
Wow.
and a lot of this is new to me too. It's like it's great.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I remember telling Matt and Tish at one point, I was like, you guys don't gossip at all, and it's really inconvenient to me because I have to keep explaining the same story to everyone in the house because you won't just talk behind my back. Like, if you could a little bit, just a touch, that'd be so much easier for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so recovery, I haven't dealt with cravings the whole time. It's been a shockingly smooth process compared to other people I've known who have recovered from, especially something as heavy as meth. Sometimes it can end up being a lifelong struggle just trying to stay clean. And it wasn't that way for me. It was a spiritual struggle. It was definitely an emotional struggle, but like that, the physiological part of it, I don't think was as difficult as it should have been. And I wonder how much of that has to do with just being around Matt and Tish. They are people I will point to as like examples of someone who read the greatest commandment is love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And they were like, cool, we'll get to work on that. Because just being allowed to exist without expectation, but within structure, and most importantly within love. That was a huge part in what allowed me to get better.
So that was your first stage of like recovery.
Yeah.
What what stopped you from continuing the same old habit of just up and leaving?
I didn't have a way to leave.
Okay.
On the one hand, like I didn't have my ID, I didn't have my social security card. It's still floating around somewhere. I just got a new one. I'm sure that'll never come back to haunt me. Anyway, I had so many illnesses. It's crazy that I was walking. So it's like I didn't have a car. I didn't have money. I was trapped, and like thank God for that. Mm-hmm.
Whereas before, like you lived in Phoenix, which is like it's easy. That stuff has easy access to public transportation, stuff like that. It makes it, or you just knew more people, or
it's
easier to get around.
Network and just ease.
Whereas
of
at Constableville, you have to walk like 15 miles to get to the nearest place that you could get away.
It's like half a mile just to the gas station to get a Twinkie.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
But it's worth it because Twinkies are awesome.
Very good. Just, living with Matt and Tish, that was such a great environment for me to experience love, like genuinely, in an untainted way. And that also, just being in a place that is so drenched in the presence of God and drenched in prayer and all of that. That was really huge as well. So I didn't want anything to do with God. I grew up in the church. I knew exactly what he would ask of me if I said, yes, I want salvation. I knew the first thing he was going to put his finger on is like, your sexuality, my guy. We got to talk about that. And I didn't want to, so I avoided it. And then I picked up this book on quantum physics from a Christian perspective because I wanted to look smarter than everyone else and forced myself to read it so that I would look smarter than everyone else. And actually reading that book, I had to ask myself, I was like, okay, put on your big boy pants. Let's be so honest with ourselves right now. Do I believe in God? Yes. And then from there began like a kind of a progression of logical questions from that point that like, you can't just, do you believe in God? Yes or no? And then just move on. Mm-hmm. If we're being intellectually honest with ourselves, if we're being
objective,
then there's more questions we have to confront as well.
Right.
And that with also just reading this book, I was like, the world is so big. Reality is so big. Book. Like this is so much bigger than me. And if it is bigger than me, it is above me. And I'm not big enough to be in charge of all of this. There has to be something big enough to be in charge of everything. So those questions that started kind of my tenderizing just a little bit. I ended up going to a conference a few months after with Courtney and Alexi, and they had a worship team at this conference from somewhere in Texas. And I was just watching the team interact with each other and just how they laughed together, how they encouraged each other, how they had fun with music together. And I realized, like, wow, I haven't had a friend in a really long time. I have trauma bonded with people. I've had people that I even got along with very well that, like, would care if I died. But, like, no one's known me in such a long time. And I haven't allowed myself to be known, and therefore I haven't allowed myself to be cared for and loved. So yeah, just watching them interact, I was like, I want that, and I might be willing to do quite a lot to get to have that friendship, that community. So
You came to my house. So you came to my house.
So the very next thing that happened is I met Nick.
Right. My whole world changed.
So at this conference, it was a very emotional experience, but I had just kind of grappled with the idea of God's sovereignty and magnitude. And at this conference kind of got to experience a sensation of his love. And so those hand in hand, I was like, okay, whether I want to or not, we are now on a journey, and this thing has started. So that began my return to faith. Like I said before, really not looking forward to the big identity issue with my faith journey. And actually, God was very kind to communicate to me, like, don't worry about that yet. Let's just work on love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And we will get to that. But don't worry about it. Just learn to be known, learn to be loved. And what we will transform as we go. So yeah, that was it began a very, very long, difficult process of me not wanting to let things go, me wanting to express myself how I wanted.
Right, yeah.
And, just having to, so many times every day, having to decide, am I going to pick what comes next? Am I going to pick the rules for my life, or am I going to surrender every day? And most of the time making wrong decisions about it.
As we do.
And thankfully we're in a small town, so everyone witnesses it all the time and they don't forget. So that's super great. How many times in this area I have been not Christ-like, and thankfully everyone remembers. So yeah, you know what's crazy? You know what's crazy?
When Christian says, you know, it's crazy, buckle up.
It's about to actually be crazy. I don't remember if that conference was in a church building or not, but if not, going to Abundant Life. First time I walked into Abundant Life, the last church I had been to before Abundant Life, I smoked meth in the bathroom.
That is crazy.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
And from one church to another church, like, those experiences being so vastly different. Abundant Life, also a huge part of this process. They very fearlessly embraced me and brought me into community and didn't let me go that was also a huge, huge part of transformation. Yeah, I even think about like how I presented myself to people when the first time I sang in that church versus how I would present myself now. And that was a long process. Just, do I prioritize God's will or do I prioritize mine? And also, do I prioritize my comfort and happiness, or do I prioritize the needs of the people that I'm claiming to be here to serve? Also a huge question. So, yeah, just years and years. Wow, it's been years and years of having to wrestle with, do I get to define myself and my identity, or is that in someone else's hands who is far greater than I am? And realizing something like identity, something like who we believe we are, is way too big of a deal to leave it up to my perception of my experience of one facet of my life. That's doing me a huge disservice. I am bigger than that. And so to be like, no, I feel like I can interpret this situation this way, and that's who I am. Whoa, that's really small. And also, yeah, just realizing I don't get to make the rules. If I really believe he is above all, then I'm not in charge here. And so what he says is good, I accept as good. And if he says something's not good, I have to accept it's not good. Furthermore, if he says it's good, then it's better than what I could pick. Like if I got to decide, I can't even sustain myself physically, materially. I'm bad at making money. Like, I can't even guarantee that I can keep myself alive. How would I be in charge of deciding the rules for my life? That would scare me. It was scary. It was awful. That was a terrible place to be in, because I'm not big enough to sustain me. I can't. I don't think anyone can. So therefore, I have to submit. I have to submit to rules that are bigger than mine. And it unfortunately doesn't matter if I understand them or not. This also has been years and years of just allowing my heart to be softened and working to be able to believe that God wants good for my life, that he wants a fulfilled, thriving, passionate life for me.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
How did you deal with the idea that like part of this process was like repentance? Did you struggle with that, or was that something that was easy for you? Or
no,
because God,
no,
yes, God wants, like, he wants all those things for us, but like, you know, yeah, there is, we all have to go through repentance, and that's like kind of the hard truth we have to face too. Like, yeah, what was that like?
I think what makes it so hard is the fact that it's not just remorse for your trespass. That part's easy. Being like, I messed up. That's the easy part. The hard part is saying, I want it to be different.
Yeah, right.
That's where you really have to sit with yourself and be like, do you though? Or are you hoping that you can just get a little grace so you can go around and do it again?
Exactly. Yep.
That's difficult because most of the time we haven't repented, and that's really uncomfortable to confront.
Yeah.
Really uncomfortable for me to confront.
That's well said. Yeah, it's the hard work after
Yeah.
So that it doesn't happen again. That's what's hard. It's not always just admitting that you're wrong. It's like, how do I make it not happen again?
Right.
Like that's the work.
Yeah. Go and sin no more.
That's the hard part. Yeah.
So yeah, that was something where a lot of times I had to confront and address, usually with the help of others, like, am I just trying to modify my behavior so I can continue living comfortably? So I can continue to have a community and support? Or am I really actually doing this? And yeah, and a lot of times it was like, oops, I haven't really been in this. I've just been floating by here. And that's why it's so important to be in a community that won't let you go. To be seen and known. So, all of this leading up to where I am now. I have been clean since I got to New York.
Nice.
And I am in a place where my identity is not in the hands of anyone, of any person. My identity is not the kinds of attraction I experience. It's not what I want. It's not how I feel. My identity comes from God. It's bigger, and it's purity. It is holy. It is because here's the thing. The goal is not Christian straight. That's not the answer. Because if I had been, I still would have lust issues. I still would have cheated in every relationship I had been in. I would still have had porn struggles. Like, that's not the answer. That's not the goal. The goal is I don't objectify people. I respect everyone around me. I see them as children of God, and I treat them as such. I live pure in my body. I treat others in purity and integrity. That's the goal. And that's the identity. I am God's, and I am for God's purposes and for his plan and his will. It's his will. I am very happy being single. I don't struggle with loneliness. Like, I'm really okay. But the number of mothers my mother has recruited to be praying for a wife for Christian, I'm scared.
There's a lot. Is that a whole host?
There are some of these people.
That's mothers, man.
Some of these people pray like they're slapping the devil in the face, open palm.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, man, I don't know if I have a choice in this.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, okay, quite a story. And I don't think I even knew most of that, to be honest with you.
Because people don't gossip.
I know. What's that about? Jeez.
Amazing.
Imagine how much more informed you would be if you would just gossip.
What county do you live in?
I think that people that can understand journeys like that are the people who have been through journeys like that. You know, I can't relate to most of that, aside from you know the law enforcement side and seeing the other side, kind of looking in a little bit different, obviously.
You know what's crazy? I never got arrested.
There you go.
Well, really, yeah.
And it's too late now. It is too late. Relax.
I just like a lot of what you said, but I kind of want to not wrap up. I want to kind of put that into context for where you are right now, what God's doing in your life right now. You know, how are you feeling about everything? And then I have some deeper questions that are a little bit more broad, but I kind of want to make sure that we get this whole story.
This is a great place to actually talk just a touch about the trip to Israel. Because, yeah, where I am now is so different than where I was 5-6 years ago, and who I believe that I am now is so much different than it was 5 or 6 years ago, and what I believe I am for and capable of doing is very different. And so, yeah, like getting to go to Israel, getting to lead worship at the church where my parents spent time praying for me, and leading there with my dad playing guitar. Like being part of miracles, and not by anything that I did. Just, again, I just showed up. While they were there, one of the verses, the promises that my mother had clung to during that time. One sec. Jeremiah 31:17, but also 16, where he says, "Thus says the Lord, refrain your voice from weeping and your eyes from tears, for your work shall be rewarded, says the Lord, and they shall come back from the land of the enemy." 17, "There is hope in your future, says the Lord, that your children shall come back to their own border." And we understand in context, this is a message to those in exile. It's to a specific people, specific time, for a specific situation. But that's a promise that she clung to, that she would say, "God, you said this, so I'm gonna keep knocking. I'm gonna keep bringing this to you." And then getting to be there, and she took me to, there's a very well-known artist in the old city with a shop, and taking me there to a painting that he had done. It's like two little boys kind of from behind holding hands walking in the streets of Jerusalem, and the verses underneath it, and her telling me, crying, telling me like, this is what I would look at, and this is what I would pray, and then we're there. Of all places too, of all places in the world, we're there in Jerusalem, and she's able to say, yes, he did. He said he would, and he did. And every time I get to get up and lead worship somewhere, I am saying, yes, he did. Every time I get to attend a family gathering and everyone is there, I get to say, yes, he did. And so I feel like that's what I'm for. I even feel more strongly like that my testimony is for moms. It's for parents with prodigals of their own. I feel so strongly that that's what this is for. To be able to tell them, he said he would, and he will. Where I am in my personal life, it's hard because, like, do the temptations go away? No. So externally, it might look like not a lot has changed. But the words that I use to identify myself have changed a lot. And the way that I see my allegiance and my heritage has changed. The way that I see my purpose and kind of where I fit, that has changed a lot. And where I get my strength and hope from has also changed a lot. Yeah.
I think that people, when they go through something like that you've been through, people expect like some kind of, and now everything's great. And now
With a
everything's
bow.
perfect with a bow. Like actually the journey is still ongoing and it may never end, you know, and I think that we need to take some stock in that. I also I like that verse a lot. And I think just, you know, context and whatever aside, the principle's still true. It's still truth, you know, and
The hope that it gives is real.
it's real.
Even if it's a little out of context, you know?
Right. And if you're going to be putting your faith in something bigger and quantifying that first statement that you said was, if God's real, then. And there's no, if God's real, then I still get to do what I want to do. It's
Right.
If God's real, then his word is real. And if his word is real, his commandments are real. And that's something I have to live by. Simple as that. And my flesh doesn't desire good. Right. Paul that talked about that. He's like, everything that I want to do is bad. Everything that I should do is good, but I don't want to do those things. That's life. That's the
that's
flesh.
something me talking about giving up my identity, being given a new identity. Mm-hmm. That's something we're all supposed to do.
Yeah.
It felt at times like he was asking me to die. Everything that made me, no, give that up. There will be no you left. And it sounds really harsh to people who don't get it, but yeah, there will be no you when he's done. It will be Christ. And that's what we're all supposed to be doing. It was just really obvious for me because it was a super external identity. But like, how many people will go through their whole life without ever having to think, question, confront, how do I describe myself? And did I come up with that or did he? And in a way, what a convenient opportunity I have had to have to confront that in such a dramatic, obvious, public way. When the reality is, I haven't done anything more difficult than what every disciple is supposed to do.
Speaking of which, while we're on that topic, have you been baptized?
I have several times.
Mm-hmm. One of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. So have I. Well, twice, but
I think perhaps thrice.
yeah. Okay. So in the context of this journey, did you seek out becoming baptized? I don't know. Would you say like for real? I don't know.
I did not.
Okay.
I did not. I did think about it quite a bit, though.
Okay. Why not? Or why or why not? What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely think there needs to be a conscious decision on the part of the baptee when it comes to baptism. However, I think at the times that I did get baptized, it was a conscious decision. Mm-hmm. I got lost, but when those moments, like when those events occurred, that I think my resolve, my conviction was true.
So you have been
was
baptized.
real. Yeah.
Nice. Cool. Yeah. No, that's great. I was just curious. Yeah. The multiple baptisms is always interesting. Get a little confusing so I was born into a Catholic family, so I was baptized very, very young.
Oh.
And then when I actually chose my faith, I decided to be baptized again much later. So yeah, the multiple baptisms is always kind of like
I was baptized like thrice as a teen.
Yeah, okay.
It's just every new church we'd go to, I'd get so excited about it. I'd be like, let's do it again.
Okay, yeah. Awesome.
I think people can relate to that. So what was your journey like back into the church? Like when you think of people who struggle in that area especially, there's a real war with the church because most of the time the church doesn't convey love very well.
Yeah.
Or at all, really. So like how can a church or Christians bring somebody in to feel comfortable in that space versus ostracizing them and judging them and preaching at them, that kind of stuff. So what was your experience like with that?
Sounds like a good question for the people that did it. Frank did it. Frank did it. I've been getting a lot of like the Office clips.
Oh, Frank did it. Yes, Frank did it. The Office. Yeah, but like from the receiving end, what did that feel like?
Things that Abundant Life did abundantly well. Proving to me first that I was not going to scare them away. I remember clearly a conversation with Charlotte Sullivan where I was like, my biggest fear with this friendship is that this will occur. And she was like, okay. And then if it does, and that was huge to be like, okay, I'm among a group of people that are not scared of me. And what's important to them is that I am here. Again, kind of like with my conversation with God, is like, yeah, we'll get to that. We're not ignoring that. We will get there, but that's not the first thing we're gonna deal with. First, we're going to get to know you,
which is huge, because I think a lot of churches forget to pay it. Well, I think a component in a lot of churches that is missing is caring about the individuals in the congregation. Like, you like show up and go through the motions and preach and then everyone goes home. Yeah. But that's like the opposite. Your experience was the opposite. Like they cared about you and like pursued you and sought you out as an individual in the church. You didn't just go unnoticed.
Right.
And then
forced me to be part of
and then
lives.
got bored and stopped going.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people's experience, I think.
And I feel like even very early on, the leaders that took me under their wing did so with intentionality. I think a lot of them saw, like, Christian is going to have a really big impact. So we're not just discipling Christian. We are discipling a future leader of the church. Not necessarily this church, but the body of Christ as a whole. Like that also gave me purpose. So that feeling of people aren't scared of me. People don't want anything from me, especially coming from so many situations of being constantly observed,
Objectified,
right,
smothered,
performing all the time, getting to be somewhere where like, no, you can just show up and grab a slice of pizza, and leave. That's no big deal.
But even just facilitating space for you to work your journey out with God too, and not be so confiding to the rules. And here's, throwing Bible verses and all that kind of stuff. Here, how about we focus on loving you and where you're at with your journey, and
but also definitely not ignoring it, not
exactly
throwing the verses away, just not throwing them in my face.
Right. That's the part people miss. I think that's the part people miss.
I remember so many times, so many different people clarifying and reassuring, like, you aren't a project. There's not some image of you that we have in mind that we'll know, like, once Christian looks like this, we did it, you guys. Mission accomplished. Is like, this is the rest of your life. We have the rest of our lives here to just be in relationship. So we're not working towards this image that we've created. You're here now. You're part of us. And a lot of really good conversations with Matt Zehr, because he's a very intellectual person. I respect intellect very much. And so being able to go head to head with him again, not feeling worried that I'm going to cross a line and that will be enough. Now I'm gone. Being able to really honestly engage in difficult conversations. And a lot of the most influential things that he's presented to me that have helped me on like the journey of surrender, we'll say, have been in the context of, because you're leading people, this is how you prioritize. Because you're leading people, this is what you need to strive for, all that kind of stuff. And that, again, just having a purpose is so big. Yeah.
Would you say that was the center of the rehabilitation, was that rehabilitation can't occur without purpose, and so finding a purpose was like a priority?
It can't occur without purpose, especially because if we remember from the very, very beginning, the whole problem is that I didn't make a plan. I didn't have anything to live for. That sounds really dramatic. So purpose, super important, but family, community. Like, I believe, I don't know anything. These are all just things that I believe. I don't know anything. I believe the solution to addiction is community. I know there is like physiological, biochemical realities. I know that. I don't understand it. But I think what drives people to that degree of isolation and self-harm has a lot to do with feeling left.
Being alone.
Yeah. And not being seen. So I don't know which one is more important, but I do know sometimes people get better and they don't have anything to work towards, and they get worse again. They don't have a mission. I know it's really important. I only know what it's like to be a man, so that's the only experience that I can speak to. It's really important for guys to have something to be heroic for.
Oh, yeah.
And if we don't, we get flabby.
Yep.
Mentally and emotionally and spiritually. And so it's sometimes it can be your wife and your kids. I think I found that with community, but also with the command to honor father and mother. That, I think, particularly in the past 2 years, that's been something I just can't stop thinking about. Realizing how important it is, how much I don't do it, how much I could be doing it more. It's so necessary for healthy intergenerational relationships. I remember going to Sight and Sound to see David. And I struggled for a few years with the idea that I felt like I had given up the chance to live the dreams that I had for myself. That my choices, I robbed myself the opportunity to be who I thought I was going to be.
Which is, you went to school for theater.
Yeah.
Yep. We touched on
really,
that.
I just wasn't willing to work hard enough to make it. Anyway. So that was something I really struggled with. If I get to choose my own path for myself, maybe I could try it again, and feeling that's not the path for me anymore, and it would really hurt to watch live productions of stuff because I missed it so much, and I would just always feel like, man, I should be there. So we went to go see David, and it's a scene where Saul and his men show up, and David is singing, and the Spirit falls on all these guys, and so everyone ends up worshiping, and it's really big dramatic scene. And I was just crying watching it because I was like, God, I'm supposed to be there. I should be up there. That's what you made me to do. And I felt like he said, so do it. Not the production. He said, worship me and I'll do this with you. Like, you worship me and I will give you the desires of your heart, but your heart has to be transformed first. We got to deal with the heart of stone that you have in your chest right now, because the desires of your heart as currently are just more stone. So you worship me, we will transform your heart and I will satisfy.
Do you think that he was asking that of you for his own desire to be worshipped, or that he knew that he could not send you there and it would be unsafe if he did until you were transformed? Like, do you have any idea why he was asking that of you?
I think my time in the theater world is done. And that's been heartbreaking for me. And I think he wanted me to understand that heartbreak will be so small in the long run. Because when I use my gifts completely surrendered to him, what he will do with them, the things I will experience and the things that I will see and the things that will happen will be satisfying in a way I don't even know about yet.
Okay. So he was basically saying, like, just trust the process.
Trust the process. And, like, yes, I made you to do this, but not this way. Yeah.
Interesting.
Have you ever?
Another reason why just being in Israel was so cool is, like, after one Sunday, I was standing there on the stage and I was like, I just led worship in Jerusalem, live stream all over the world. Like, my parents are here.
I watched it. Nice job.
Yeah, you're talking about purpose.
And I was like, this is what you were talking about. Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it took me back to that moment. Sitting there and, like, my heart yearning and him being like, don't worry about it.
Yeah. Have you ever read Wild at Heart?
No, is that a
John
horse
Eldridge? Book? No, I think there is a horse I think there might be a horse on the cover, actually.
Is it a book for men?
Enough. Yeah.
And it's either a horse or a lion.
Let's see. Hold on. No, it's just a guy jumping off a cliff.
Okay.
Okay. I just want you to read this part, or I want you to listen to this part and tell me if it fires you up. Because it's funny. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Florida with my dad, and for no reason, we just sat down at the table at night and just started talking about life and kind of where we're at and, you know, how those go.
That's the most dad situation.
Oh, man. And my whole, like, perspective on things has changed a little bit too, because stuff is constantly clicking all the time and it's making more sense to me. We were talking about how do you raise sons to be purposeful, driven, accountable, responsible, and willing to take adventure. So, long story short, after an hour and a half, and we're going to have him on again to have the conversation here, hopefully, because I was about halfway through it, and I'm like, man, I wish this was being recorded right now so I could listen to it later. He told me about this book, and I'm a couple of chapters in right now, but this is just in the introduction, and I want you to kind of get your reaction to it. So, Wild at Heart, this is John Eldridge. In the introduction, he says, most messages for men ultimately fail. The reason is simple. They ignore what is deep and true in a man's heart, his real passions, and simply try to shape him up through various forms of pressure. This is a man you ought to be. This is what a good husband, father, Christian churchgoer ought to be. Fill in the blanks from there. He's responsible, sensitive, disciplined, faithful, diligent, dutiful, etc. Many of these are good qualities. That these messengers are well-intentioned, I have no doubt. But the road to hell, as we remember, is paved with good intentions. They are a near total failure and should seem obvious by now. No, men need something else. They need a deeper understanding of why they long for adventure and battles and beauty. and why God made them just like that. And they need a deeper understanding of why women long to be fought for, to be swept up into adventure, and to be the beauty. For that is how God made them as well. So he says that's why he offers this book. Not the
You got to read the rest
steps.
of the book to get the answer?
Pretty much, yeah.
Dang it. I'm locked in. Is that where it ends?
So he goes, I offer this book not as a 7 steps to being a better Christian, but as a safari of the heart to recover a life of freedom, passion, and adventure. Getting fired up yet?
Give me the spark.
Okay, hold
notes.
on a second.
I'm angry.
Hold on a second. So I just want you to hear a quote, like, man, like just fires me up. Fires me up. This is a Teddy Roosevelt quote that is right underneath that.
Man's man.
Teddy Roosevelt. He said, it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotion, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who, at the best, knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who never knew victory nor defeat. You need the link for the book.
That last line is hard.
That's a hard line right there.
If I have to sit through another men's retreat that talks about, like, we're going to talk about biblical manhood, and it is just a list of things you should be doing, I'm going to scream. Because I agree, we're more than that. And pandering to our need for performance is serving the lowest common denominator amongst us. If we stop at, this is how you should look, these are the things you should be doing, the jobs you should have. If we stop there and never get down to, this is who you are, this is your identity, this is why you are the way that you are, there's a purpose to it.
Yep.
There's a reason why you are who you are.
You were created for this reason.
Right.
Yep.
If we never get there, we will continue to have one-dimensional men.
Yeah. I think it's exactly like what you said. The earliest thing you said was about purpose and drive, and how, if you want to know what hell looks like on earth, be a person who's adrift with no aim. I'm telling you, man, I've been there.
Yeah.
Like, I was there before, and it's not pretty.
Yeah.
You want to talk about, like, depression and, like, all these things that men are going through, and women too, but men need this different kind of drive for adventure, drive for purpose, drive
Heroism.
for, that's it. That's it. That's what we're called for. Yeah. Lead your home. You know how hard that is?
No, I don't.
You got a dog.
You get a dog. Ask people who lead homes.
Yeah.
Ask people who are married. Ask people who are figures in the community. You talked about purpose in your community and how important that is. They're downstream from each other, right? So you get purpose from your community, and your community gets that from you. That's huge.
And I think there's a huge aspect that was super in sync.
46 episodes in, that's what you're going to get.
Son.
There's a huge aspect of, I don't know, this was true of me. Worrying that, well, and it's a balance, because worrying that, like, I'm made wrong. That, like I said before, that I had lost the opportunity for something, that I had ruined the story. And there's a sermon while I was in Jerusalem on Levi and how the Levites are the priests. That wasn't the plan originally. The plan originally was the whole nation would be priests. Every family, the firstborn male, would be dedicated to the Lord. That's why he saved them in the Passover. Every firstborn male would be a priest, so every family would have a priestly representation. Then Moses comes down the mountain. Immediately they've broken the covenant, golden calf incident. Me too. And smashes the tablets, goes up for a new covenant. In that covenant, the Levites are now the priests. Why? Because when he came down and smashed the tablets, he said, who is for the Lord? The Levites stood up and he said, come to me, strap on your swords. We are cleaning house. That's a weird thing until we look even earlier back at Dinah, their sister. And Dinah was very violently taken advantage of by someone outside their people. And then he says, oh, actually, let me marry her, which is it's crazy in a modern context. The family gets together and they're like, what would best honor our sister? And Jacob decides, like, okay, if they all get circumcised and so we're not separate peoples anymore, then this union can happen. And that's our best chance at restoration here. So they tell them all the males of that family all get circumcised so that this guy can marry this girl that he has defiled. Levi and Simeon decide on their own that they're going to go through while everyone's recovering from their little surgery. They're going to take matters into their own hands and go through and kill all of the men that are currently recovering from their surgery. And
rough go of it.
And it's so funny because, like, in the past, I would have read that and been like, yeah, that's justice. Good for them. And I'm sure that's what they thought, too. They're like, this is the way we can honor our sister the best. But we don't get to decide what justice is. So Jacob tells them that was not the plan. Shame on you for this. So then later in Genesis 49, when he's giving his blessings to the 12 sons, and it's prophecy, like what's going to happen to them in the future. He tells Levi, you are a violent man. I curse your anger. I hope to never seek your counsel. You won't have a home. You'll wander amongst your brothers. That's his blessing on Levi. Fast forward to the golden calf incident. The Levites are the ones that stand up on God's side. They claim allegiance with God's purposes and then perform a super violent act in that moment. And from there, God says, you're now the priests. And the way God is able to take a fatal flaw, but when it's given to him, he can use it. He's big enough. And we even think, like, what did the priests do? Just kill things all day long. They're just slaying animals all day long. Like, who else are you going to have to do that job? And it was so comforting. It was so affirming hearing that presented. Like, there are so many things that I'm ashamed of about myself, or things that I wish I could change, and realizing, like, that's not the point. The point is, give yourself to God, and he can redeem all of that. Why am I the way that I am? I don't know. I don't really care anymore. What I do care about is that it is surrendered to God. What I do care about is the fact that I get to be part of God's plan now. I get to affect things for good. That shouldn't have happened. But because he's in charge, that's my story now. Like, the Bible is my story now. That's my heritage. I've been brought into that narrative.
It's like a path to surrender, just ongoing adventure to surrender.
So I think with having purpose, with having heroism, it can look like surrender. Because that has to come first.
Patrick Harney was on episode 12, I think it was. And you could say, if you knew him, that a lot of his quote-unquote identity, how you would see him, is flying. And he made a statement in there pretty interestingly to kind of say, like, hey, Lord, if this isn't for you, then take it away. Like, it's his whole life's work.
Yeah.
It's what he's wanted to do since he was a kid. But if it's not for him, if it's not of him, take it away from me.
Yeah.
Sounds like that would resonate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we ask ourselves that question enough. Like, we could almost wake up every morning and try to remember to ask that question of the Lord. Like, if this is not for you, take it away. Like, man, that is kind of in line with, like, the things that the introduction to that book was saying. Like, we're preached at these things all the time.
Yeah.
But, like, there's just so much that's easy to forget. Like, there's so many good things that, like, we forget to ask for forgiveness every day. Like, days go by where I forget to go to the Lord and say, hey, like, I need forgiveness on this.
Yeah.
Like, why can't we remember to do these things? And, like, that right there is a big one. Like, if I could remember to wake up every morning and just say, hey, if anything that we got going on in our life right now is not for you, take it away every day. Because, like, man, how much time goes by before you, like, years can go by before you realize, oh, it's been a while since I've talked to God about that. Like, it really is important. Years can go by. Yeah, that's just wild to me.
The thing is, in order to do that, you have to trust that he is good and good for you.
And set a reminder on your phone.
And set a reminder on your phone. That's something that has been at the forefront of my mind, especially this past year, is, again, with the concept of, like, my identity is in his hands. My identity is sexual purity. My identity is how the Bible defines me. For a long time, I didn't trust that God wanted me to have a happy life. And granted, happy is probably the wrong word.
Fulfilling.
I didn't trust that God wanted good things for me. I thought God wanted me to suffer and be miserable and be lonely. I believed this in my core for a while and finally had to confront that. And the same with letting the Lord have access to what you have or what you don't. It requires trusting that he is good. And so I'm still working on that.
Yeah, and actively pursuing that. I think that a lot of times there is something to the Lord prodding your heart and then you having action as a result. And then there's another thing to seeking that out and saying, hey, Lord, what's in me that needs changing, or what's in me that needs cutting away? What's in me that is blinding me to something else, or I need to get, that's hurting me or my family. It's like being proactive is certainly a part as well, but it doesn't mean that that's the only way.
And it's hilarious because we will then be like, oh, God's trying to teach me something. It's like, no, you're just not eating. Of course you're starving. You haven't eaten food. We'll be like, he's pruning me. No, my guy, you're denying yourself sustenance.
I think we touched on a lot of really good stuff, but I want to kind of finish up on a little bit lighter note. But before we get to the lighter note,
I have no lighter notes.
Before we get to the less dark notes, I just think that your parents' perspective must be something so valuable. I'm sure you talk. I'm sure you guys talk. What it was like in that time when they had no authority. wasn't their decision. There was only so much they could do.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? What does that feel like?
I don't know that I will ever know.
Because it'd be a biggest fear for parents to be helpless.
Yeah. And yet, it's such a universal experience. Having a child wander off, that... And so I don't even know the ways they've learned to pray from that experience. Rebecca has told me that's when she learned to intercede. She had to, because there was nothing else she could do. And watching my parents grow, the way that they would react to the situation of me saying, hey, this is who I believe that I am. If that were to happen now versus in 2013, like, they're different people too. The way they would have handled that is so different. And they didn't just sit around crying about it. They did cry a lot, but they said, all right, we need to get to work. Like, what do we need to learn? How do we need to grow? Like, Christian is obviously making very bad decisions, but where are we immature? What's missing? And so the work that they put in, learning, what is it to hold grace and truth in perfect unity? What is it to welcome someone into relationship with perfect love, which doesn't ignore truth. The literature that they read, the work that they put in, it's
Pretty profound.
Yeah.
Like, to be in a situation like that and think, what do I have to learn in this situation?
Yeah.
Or how can I be better?
I think that's a very rare.
Huge blessing to be able
Experience.
to watch your parents continue to grow.
Yeah. Yep. And it certainly played a gigantic role in your restoration. Like, one of the biggest roles, I'm sure. Just having the way that your parents handled it had a big impact on it even happening in the first place. I'm sure, right? Like, they could have either driven you away or brought you in.
Or been bitter. How many plane tickets did they buy?
Yeah, they could have driven you away or brought in, or welcomed you back and tried to help you. And I think so often, parents drive their kids away.
Mm. It's the prodigal son, right? Yeah.
This is the lighter note. I just want to remind you.
Yes, finally.
So it's so funny. I feel like I believe, no scripture to back this up. This is not in the Bible anywhere. But I just believe, like, the prayers of a mother just reach somewhere very special in God's heart. There's got to be something.
That is interesting.
Like, just the burden that they are tasked with to intercede for their children, for their families. Like, God has to feel that.
Yeah, I wish there was more. Sometimes, doesn't that make you wish there was more content in the Bible about Jesus's mother? Because, like, there's got to be some kind of connection. Yeah, like you're right, and like that makes me think of, like, the Virgin Mary, like Jesus's mom, and like there's got to be some kind of connection there. Yeah,
I think about how we don't have a mother character in the parable of the prodigal son. But I guarantee she was there. You think that kid feeding the pigs was like, oh, I just had an epiphany. That was your mother. Go home.
Yeah. Like, praise the Lord that you're here. Here's why I say, when I don't actually know, I just feel like I'm very pessimistic about humility in the world. Like, that's my number one. That's the number one reason why I would imagine that a lot of parents may not handle that situation as well as it seems like your parents did. Maybe we get them in and talk about it. We actually know, but I'm assuming it. Anyway, so I think that the world needs more Jesus, and I think that means that the world lacks humility, because they're two things that can, to me, go hand in hand. Like, I don't see a lot of humility in the world. And so, yeah, praise the Lord that your parents had. And here's why. Because, like, your parents had only been parents for 20 years at that point, 22. Like, in a lot of ways, they were still winging it too. And, like, this was their first experience with you know what I mean? So, like, again, like, winging
no preparation
it.
for that.
Yeah, like, they're not, they had been their kids weren't 7. Like, I'm a new parent, but in a lot of ways, you feel like you're always a new parent, because, like, you're always facing things for the first time.
Yeah.
And so to have the humility to understand that and not be like, I'm experienced, mom and dad, we know best.
Yes.
Drive your kids away.
Yes.
That's more what I mean. Like, but praise the Lord that your parents were able to have that perspective.
When Chris and Rebecca got married, I got to sing a song in their ceremony, and it was while I think they were doing communion, and it is the song that would play on my parents' wedding video. So we grew up watching it, and that's like the music that they had in the background was the song that I sang during their wedding. And I remember being in the ceremony and thinking about, I'm so dramatic, I'm so sentimental. I remember just thinking about my parents sitting there watching their youngest get married, and the prodigal is there, singing this song from the conception of the family. And the whole song is just about, like, whatever you ask, Lord, I want to obey. I'll go where you say, I'll do what you say. Like, I want to obey you. And thinking about how they decided that when they started their family, they said, where God says to go, we will go, having no idea what was about to happen in the next 30 plus years. Thinking about them, they're like 21, getting married, being like, yeah, whatever the Lord says, we'll obey. And you're like, you have no idea, right, but you did. And you kept obeying. And what has come from that, the miracles, the relationships, the experiences, the lives that they've touched, what the family tree is now, all from them as kids being like, what we're going to do is say yes. What would our obedience look like in 30 years?
That's kind of exactly what he was talking about in his episode too. Just kind of a nature of surrender and send me. I'll go. Send me. And, for whatever purpose that looked like for the time that they were spending, was the time such as this. That was the whole thing. Like, for a time such as this, we are here.
Yeah.
And what is our purpose here? And then we go somewhere else. For a time such as this, what is our purpose here?
Yeah.
And then in your own family, we're going through this thing with Christian. For a time such as this, what do we do?
Yeah.
Yeah. That kind of surrender, the fruit is just, it shows.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to do. That's a hard thing to do, to give up that much control.
Yeah.
That's tough to do.
Yeah. So I'm almost so thankful that I'm so bad at keeping myself alive. Because, like, it's easy to not be in control. That's fine.
Yeah, that's the easy part.
I bet you do a better job than me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Nick, do you have any more thoughts?
No, I think, thank you so much for sharing that. I know I keep saying it, but I feel super honored that you would come on here and talk about that. It means a lot to me personally. And yeah, maybe we could have you back on and we can delve into Israel a little bit.
Next time it'll be much more fun. We got the hard stuff
Just
out of the way.
impactful.
It's fun now.
Yeah, I mean, I super excited to hear what you alluded to a few things. You spent 3 months there, so yeah, I'm sure there's a lot to talk about.
I'm basically just here to make more money so I can go back.
Yeah.
It's a cool place.
I am so out of money.
It's on my bucket list. I gotta get out there.
You got 2 years.
What?
You have 2 years
I have 2 years to what?
with a free place to stay.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. My big thing is like, I just can't believe that you actually float in the Dead Sea. And that's really what I need to
Guess
experience.
the one thing I refuse to do.
You didn't do it?
No.
To mainstream.
Too many TikToks.
No, actually.
Everybody's done it. It's overblown.
I like weirdly like, I want to know that it's true. I want to experience it. Because I sink like a rock.
Baffling.
So
it's baffling.
I've never.
The problem was when the moment came, when it was like time for that, I was like, I am going to take a nap. And that's what I did.
You
could have
only
taken a
get
nap.
to be there for a
taken a nap.
certain amount of
Floating.
time.
I didn't go to
And now-
the Dead Sea because I took a nap.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm sure there's like so much more. That's the thing, is that does sometimes get the focus. And like, actually, looking at some of the pictures that you posted, it was like kind of made me realize like, oh, there's like beauty all over. Like there's a lot that's not paid attention to. Like some things are focused on, but like just the landscapes and the backgrounds of the pictures that you posted, like, man, it's like gorgeous there. Weird landscape that we don't see in America.
Yeah.
Like we're not used to like that type of earth. That blew my mind.
Going
like how
from
different it is.
Jericho to Jerusalem is the strangest rock formations I've ever seen.
Yeah, like we don't get that in like northern New York or Kansas. Like it's like it's a different part of the world.
Arizona or Nevada, they don't look like that.
Yeah.
It's
anyway
really odd. Yeah.
So I would love to.
Why do you float in the Dead Sea like that?
Salt
so much
content. Salt content. It's very dense.
Interesting.
But don't ask me. Ask somebody who's been there and didn't do it.
And chose not to go.
And took a nap.
I would love to have you back on if you could share
definitely.
some of those impactful experiences.
And also like what's next for you and like what does the future look like? What do what are some things you want to do? But the biggest thing is thanks for being here and being humble, honest, and vulnerable, because I think people can learn from that kind of stuff. The world needs more of that for sure. One
more thing. One thing that I really appreciate about you is that you have main character desire. Like I've known you long enough now to know that you love theater. And you've talked a lot about things like, not having to perform when you walk into a room versus like kind of a desire to be that though. Like that. Yeah. And to hear you speak about the humility that you've gained now, which I always appreciate, a good dose of humility.
Slice of humble pie.
Yeah, and it's just refreshing in the world. And to hear you talk like now, like realizing that you are not the main character, especially when you talk about how you kind of just showed up. Your parents were praying for you, the people that were interceding in your life, and how you just kind of realized, I wasn't the center of attention. I just kind of walked in the door of a bigger became a part of a bigger story. Like, man, it's really cool to hear you say that, because it is like opposite of your nature almost. And not that it's a bad thing, like, cause there's talent and things there's things that could come from that, but it's just really cool to hear you like self-realize that. And I just think that's really lots of things, like a sign of maturity, a sign of how far you've come. And I just really appreciate the humility in that. It means a lot to me. Yeah. I think it's really cool. So thanks for being here.
Yeah. We'd love to have you on again.
Thank you guys so much for making the time to come on my show. I really appreciate that. This has definitely been easier said than done with your host, Christian Zehr.
Perfect.
Thanks. That's all right. Take care, everybody.